Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Marshall, I would like to acknowledge before we get started that we always seem to start these episodes with, something where we're looking over shoulders, etc. We're saying, let's see how this goes. This is a real fly by the night operation. And meanwhile, behind you is proof that somehow fly by night is not quite as fly by night as we think.
We're consistently fly by night.
Yeah, there you go.
That makes all the difference. So what do they say about, excellence is just doing things, consistently and persevering and stuff like that. So we have persevered until episode 100. And we thought this was going to be a milestone episode, but then we did nothing to prepare for it. The milestone episode will be coming up. We're shooting for possibly episode 104.
For very specific reasons, as you have figured out.
Specific reasons, but episode 104, stay tuned, keep listening. Epic is all I can say.
Yeah, and I would like to point out two things. First is, it turns out actually this is our 101st episode, because back when we didn't really know what we were doing, even more so than now, I had an episode that I labeled like, I don't know what number. It was like episode 16, part 1. And then I did episode 16, part 2, because it was so long. And so everything's off. The other thing I'd like to point out is that for anybody watching this on our YouTube channel, Mike has bunny ears. It's perfect. Little cat ears, something like that. The zeros just line up perfectly over your head, and it's just great. So anyway, 104 is the big one. Yeah. That's when we're gonna do something. We're just saying it right now. It's gonna be something fabulous. So stay tuned.
Oh, definitely. But we got some good stuff for this episode. So
we do. I mean, honestly, it all worked out because we set this up in the last episode talking about do you have culture or just cult? Just halfway there between this pendulum of results and relationships, of treating people right versus doing something productive to where we make money. And there were 4 things we mentioned in the course of that episode that really help you honor both sides of that pendulum swing, because it's not a problem to solve. It's a tension to manage between those two sides. So for the next 4 episodes, we think we're going to cover these 4 sentences that really help you do that as a leader.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Definitely. So and sentence number 1 is,
culture trickles downhill. Culture trickles downhill.
When I hear the word trickles, it's not always positive, right? So it could be a pristine babbling brook trickling, across the bedrock, right? Or that old adage, don't pee on my back and tell me it's raining. Right. Right. That kind of trickle. So it could go either way here. So culture trickles downhill. It's either a great thing or a bad thing, right? Depending on what it is what it is that your culture is.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm seeing this, Mike, as sort of 3 degrees of difficulty in trickling. I think there are levels to this that get increasingly harder as you go. And they're pretty practical. I mean, they're things that you just need to sort of think through how you're doing what you're doing. Like we said last time, don't change what you're doing per se. It's how you do it that is sort of making that culture. So 3 degrees of difficulty that we'll quickly discuss here and give you, the listeners, some ideas on how to improve your trickling.
Yes. So level 1.
Level 1. So let's just sort of get the initial stuff out of the bag. If you say that you treat your employees fairly, but their pay plan is a shell game, you are not trickling the right thing downhill. If you say we treat our customers with integrity, but you rip them off, you have a problem, and people downstream of you, whatever you're trickling down, they're going to notice that. And it will affect the culture. It will turn your people into something really uncomfortable, frankly. They'll either leave or they'll stick around and feel like prostitutes. They'll know that they're a part of something kind of icky. So that's, I mean, in a nutshell, stop being bad, stop sinning. You need Jesus, go to church, do something to turn this around. But, don't do those things that are clear violations of morality.
Well, and it's not, and you really, even to the level of sinning, right? It's just
Right.
the cognitive dissonance between this is what I say, and this is what we're doing. Once it doesn't line up, people immediately sense that. And they might not even know exactly what it is, right? They couldn't make a list of here's the things that we do, but they know something doesn't feel right here.
But over the years, I've worked with, some companies that sort of had me parachute in, whether they liked it or not, right? I'm visiting a car dealership or what have you, and they didn't necessarily want to be in my program, but they got me because of some other thing that they had to do, blah, blah, blah. And I have had people say, if they don't qualify for this kind of a loan, we take their head off over here. It's one of the expressions in the old school car businesses. We shove somebody in a car to the point that their head comes off. Their finances personally be damned. And things like that do happen that are very conscious. And that's sort of what we're talking about here, is the conscious level of, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Guess what? Your culture is being negatively impacted when you do that. So don't be too surprised unless you address that. So that's that first degree of difficulty is trickling the right thing. It's like Jim Gaffigan, he's like from Indiana, right? He's like right up your alley.
Oh yeah, love him.
He's got a routine where he talks about his going to church with his wife, and the service goes on too long, and he's going, wrap it up, Padre. I got some sinning to do. And it's like, that's the joke, right? Is you're consciously wanting to not do the very thing that you say that you're there to do. So don't do that. Don't do that. If you need help with it, call us.
Oh yeah. Well, to me, my favorite example of this is I've been on hold for 30 minutes trying to reach an organization, and the voice recording on the hold messages says, your call is important to us.
Yeah.
No, it's not. If
and you know it, and I know it.
Yeah, you would have staffed properly for the call volume that you have, and you'd be talking to me.
Right.
Yeah, you say it's important. I'm not feeling it.
Right. I love it. Well, that's level one. So, conscious violations of your culture, don't do that.
Level
two. So this is where you're also being conscious, but it's consciously proactive. So you're modeling behavior. So if level one is not doing the bad stuff, level two is modeling the good stuff. And, this could be at a number of different levels. It could be really big things, really little things. But just a quick example from one of my clients, they got together and came up with a plan for how they were going to improve what their customers were experiencing. And one of the simple rules was guide a guest, don't point. Guide, don't point. Disney's done that, people like that. So they were trying to institute this plan, right? The dealer said, I have to do it too. And it's hard. So he brought up in front of his team in some presentations that there were several times where he had caught himself with somebody saying, hey, where's the bathroom? And he would say, it's right over there. And he'd point, and then he'd just start walking, follow the point. You have to get into that habit. It's hard, but consciously modeling the behavior that you're wanting to see. That's level two.
Oh yeah. Now I saw an example where this leader was he's basically yelling at this other employee and told him that it's never okay to raise your voice to a customer.
Right.
Like, he's yelling at me that I shouldn't raise my voice to a customer. Yeah,
Right.
and you see this on the flip side, right? So the Ritz-Carlton example. So
Yeah.
at the Ritz-Carlton, if when they show up for work, their shoes have been shined, their uniforms have been pressed for them, they eat the same food as the guests, and so we treat our employees like ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
We're serving ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
And so you see this, you see this. All you have to do is look at you go into different businesses and look at the customer restroom versus the employee restroom. Oh my goodness. You go in the customer restroom and it's clean and shiny and there's perfumes and towels and stuff like that. You go in the employee restroom, right? You can't go in without a hepatitis shot. Because it's incredible. And so you go, okay, we say we value people,
Right.
but what we're really saying is we value some people,
Right.
particular people, a set of people that you're not a part of because you chose to work for us.
You should not do that, whatever that is.
Yeah. So the modeling can come in terms of the facility, the treatment, the policies. It all communicates a message. It all communicates culture.
Yeah, beautiful. So start consciously doing those things, work them into habits. That's sort of the level 2 degree of difficulty, the second degree of difficulty. Let's talk about the third one. And this is the one that's a little messier because it's unconscious. This is where we sort of revisit the things we just talked about, but now we're talking about them on a very unconscious or a subconscious level. And we've talked, the book by the Arbinger Institute, it's leadership and self-deception.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about the box, this metaphor of being in the box. That's sort of what we're talking about here. I always think of the Bible verse, Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can know it? And the implication there is you can't even know your own heart. You lie to yourself sometimes. You're so deceitful. And what I get from that, I guess, is that there's the practical thing to do is to constantly be looking at the values that you have listed down, the things, the expectations you say you want, and say, are my actions lining up with that? How I led that meeting, is it lining up with that? How I talk to that customer, to that employee, am I lining up with those values? And let me give a couple examples, Mike, because I really want to honor this idea of the tension between sort of the treating people right and getting results, the relationship and the results. So I can think of examples on both sides. On the results side, I think you've been in meetings, I've been in meetings where we have, it might even be a colleague of ours, let alone a client, say something to the effect of, I tell it like it is. I'm a truth teller. Sorry if that offends somebody, but I just got to be honest. Got to be courageous and bold and tell the truth. And I say that with a little bit of a sarcastic tone to my voice. And that's not fair because there are plenty of people who say, yeah, I dish it out and I want you to dish it to me. I need to know what's going on. Tell me, be blunt. And they really appreciate and value that. But then there are other people who do that. And then the minute that they start to get some truth told back to them, they fold. They get defensive. They come out swinging. They might even put that person on sort of a hit list of, that's one of the people they're on the naughty list in our department. They're a problem. They're not a problem. They're doing the value that you said you were going to do. And that's what Chris Argyris, the Harvard organizational culture scholar, has called this as I think he calls it the values espoused and the values in kind, or the theory espoused and the theory in use. The idea that, here's what we say we preach, here's what we practice. We preach this, but we practice that. And it violates your culture. It violates the thing you say you want when you fold, when you get truth told back to you, or whatever other, expectation you're saying that you're about. So that's on the results side, but it's just as true on the flip side of the relationship, we say, we are here to make sure our employees succeed and grow. And then we only call them into the office when they've done something wrong or their numbers are off, and we don't regularly coach them or at the very least just say, what do you need from me? How you doing? What's your focus? How can I help? Something that shows that we're there to make sure they're successful. I know that's near and dear to your heart. You wrote a doggone book about it. So I will shut up and let you take the floor here. But those are examples from both sides of the house. Do you consciously, are you consciously saying X, but practicing Y unconsciously? And that's the issue. So you can line that up.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you see this manifest itself in the 2 orientations that a new hire gets. And so you get the company orientation.
Yep.
We're honest, we have integrity, we treat people like family, we've done it for 100 years, right?
Right.
And they go to the official orientation, and then we put them into their respective department or section or whatever. Yeah. And then they get the other orientation, right? Where the veteran employees go, I don't know what they told you in that room, but here's how it really works around here.
Right.
And so it's not the values that are explained, it's the values that are lived. And so they get the second orientation. And so your goal is, as a leader, is to have both orientations be similar. Right? Yeah. There's alignment between the two, that when we say we treat people like family, that they go to their department and the guy goes, yeah, they talked about that family thing. Everywhere I've worked talked about like that. And then to have the employee say, well, let me give you a couple of examples.
Let me tell you a story.
Yeah, my kid got on this travel team and I had to take some time off and they let me. We had a guy and he was out and his daughter was having issues, had to go to a special hospital. They paid his salary, even though they didn't have to while he was there. And then all of a sudden you've got these stories that reinforce the words that were stated. And we see that, you look at a practical example, and I've done this in some of the organizations I've worked with, where the key to this is your values are written and they're agreed upon and they're posted. And so we take 2 flip charts and we put them underneath the values, and one flip chart is examples of when we've lived these values and examples of when we haven't.
Ooh, yeah.
And we open up each meeting and give me an example of this past week when we've lived our values. Customer came in, it was this lady, or first time she'd been in, her husband had passed away. He always did this. She was doing it for the first time. We could have knocked her head off, but that's not what we do here. We actually took care of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and then here's this value, right? So-and-so had an issue. He went to his manager. Manager told him he didn't have time to talk to him, and he kind of blew him off. Right. There's an example of us not living, and so you just start the list, and the goal is for, we're all imperfect and a work in progress, even as organizations, is just to have fewer and fewer examples on the not living versus the living our culture flip chart.
Yeah, this is a constant battle, right? And leadership and self-deception talks about that you're constantly getting out of the box. It's just getting conscious about the fact that you're in a box is the issue, that you're lying to yourself about this other person or whatever the situation is. Mm-hmm. And, it's really interesting that you brought up stories, right? Because the 2 flip charts are a set of stories on one side, a set of stories that are counterexamples on the other side. Mm-hmm. The orientation, right? Hopefully there's a story in the official orientation. Hopefully there are some smaller stories of individuals that fit in and agree with that overall store official orientation, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what hits me here, is that this episode is something that should be a constant battle you're always fighting, because you're constantly trying to get more stories out there. Let me give you 2 awesome examples. One is terrifying. The other is just uplifting. So let me do the terrifying one first. I never met the guy, but there was an absentee owner of a dealership group that I was asked to call on. And the people at the store were really nice, but they just knew that the boss was crooked. And, whatever their website said, whatever their advertising said, the main thing that had to be communicated in the, private orientation was, hey, ladies, never be in a room alone with him. Now, there were lawsuits, and that dealership is no longer in business. That dealership group is no longer in business. And I won't say anything more about that. You can draw your own conclusions. But it never had a good culture. Despite some really good people working there, striving for it, what trickled down was just they couldn't overcome it. Mm-hmm. Here's an awesome example. I do have a client. It's a restaurant group. I guess because the story is personal, I won't mention their name, but they're awesome. They're just they strive for excellence in all that they do in their restaurants. And I was out to dinner at one of those restaurants, just sort of on a couple date with my wife and another couple. And turns out that they have somebody at their office whose sister was a longtime employee of this restaurant group. And so they told me a story. This is not the person. This is not the family member of the person. This is a coworker of the family member of the person who repeated this story about how there was a daughter who had to get medical treatment far, far away. There was a birthday party or an anniversary party or something that they all wanted to attend, but they were going to have to leave very late that night and get up there the next morning for this treatment. It was cancer or something like that. It was pretty serious stuff. The restaurant group, the owners, paid for a limousine and a driver to let these family members attend the party, then get in this vehicle and fall asleep so that they could have a night's sleep as they drove up to the hospital. People are still telling that story, and I can tell you the reputation of that restaurant group is stellar. They do honor what they preach. That's what we're looking for, right? That's what this whole episode is about, is people telling stories about you that say that's exactly what you're going to get. What he says is what you're going to get. What she is about is exactly what you experience in the wild with her. That's what we hope this episode is helping you do.
Oh, most definitely. And when you think about it, right, nobody remembers the bullet points.
Right.
You do your orientation, and here's the 4 values that we stand for, and here's our sentence, our vision sentence, and nobody remembers any of that. The only thing they remember are the stories that illustrate that, the stories that illustrate us not doing that.
That's right.
And one of the things that you see that I've noticed for years is the values of the chief day-to-day person tend to be the values of that organization.
That's right.
Whoever the highest ranking person is day-to-day, if their values have to align with the organization's values, and then you get a whole lot of other people who believe the same thing.
That's right.
And if they're out of line, then you get transitory people coming and going. You get behaviors that seem abhorrent to the stated values or the values of the leader that don't align. It's just a mess. So if the top guy doesn't believe what the organization is preaching, then the whole thing falls apart.
All right, so we got to wrap this up. Culture trickles downhill, 3 degrees of difficulty. Don't do bad things, model the right behavior, and then spend time thinking about unconsciously, subconsciously, the things you're doing. Do they line up with the things that you say you value as an organization or as a person? So that's what we're suggesting you do. 3 things there. And if we can help, reach out to us, come back for 3 more episodes of similar goodness to this. There are a lot of different layers of how you make sure you honor both sides of the pendulum. And we're going to cover them all here, we think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And try the exercise. 2 pieces of paper. Over the course of time, make a list of the times where you've lived your values. When you haven't, if the list of times that you haven't is longer than the list of times that you have, call us.
Right.
Yeah. Hit me up. Look, I'm still doing the old school vintage phone thing.
Yeah, that's a nice phone there, Mike.
Yeah. Thanks. So with that, let's send this off to our announcer, whose values are always clear to us.
Oh, absolutely.
He cares, and because he cares, he can make fun of us.
That's right.
And that's a wrap. The musings of Mark and Mike. No rights reserved, etc. Feel free to share and discuss what you heard today. Even claim the ideas as your own. Who'd want to do that? See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius. Thanks.
That's good enough.